Good morning, everyone. Super excited about today's topic. It's going to be a
Morning,
good
everyone.
one for
Super
sure.
excited about
What we're going to be
today's
talking
topic.
about
Specifically,
good morning, everyone.
for
Super
sure.
excited about
Monolithic
today's topic.
specifically,
And what that
morning, everyone.
means for various users, what that means for organizations, and ultimately, is that really a good thing? So one of the things that we're seeing out there is this massive hype related to metaverse activities, and metaverse can quite literally be anything underneath the sun. I will pull up a quick slide related to what type of metaverses are out there and what they're being used for. But we're also going to talk about the structure and infrastructure that's required for them, or at least what structure and infrastructure should be used versus what's currently being used, and why that's important for you as a viewer and user and potential user across the board. So we're going to dive right into it. For those of you who don't know what a metaverse is, to give you the highest level understanding of it, is some people actually may be familiar with with metaverse on this stream, but it is a immersive digital ecosystem that has interconnected networks for both digital content that is either overlaid onto the physical world around you or a complete virtual world. Okay, so there's a big difference between just a Roblox experience for Metaverse. When you are building a metaverse, you can 100% have a Roblox style experience or a Meta Horizons experience where I am directly connected and in a virtual space as an avatar moving around. 100% metaverse style. There's also the metaverse of digital information overlaid on the real world. Now, we're going to talk about what digital twins are, what spatial compute we talked about, what digital twins were previously. We're going to talk about spatial computing and the big differences between various types of spatial computing, both augmented virtual reality, the feedback loop that's actually required. But in addition to that, we're going to dig into metaverses specifically and how metaverses can be built, should be built, and what that like looks like. So uh, digital content in the real world is technically an augmented reality experience. If I place this couch in the back of my room and replace it with my phone and a different couch, it's digital content in the real world. That is technically a metaverse. The same way that you would have a metaverse experience if I put on an Oculus or a MetaQuest Pro 2 headset and I am, in Minecraft or Roblox or this immersive world or on Mars for an educational experience. Those are equally metaverse style activities. People that differentiate both or differentiate metaverse only being immersive and removing the real world around you generally aligned to Ready Player One, the movie, as a milestone or a key inflection point of what the metaverse will be. There's others out there like myself that believe that there's going to be a blended world. There's going to be this digital world on top of the real world around us. So those two different ideas can coexist at the same time, should coexist at the same time, and no one actually loses if they do exist at the same time, which is ultimately great, right? Options are a good thing. Okay, keep that in mind. That's a good little tip. So I have a digital content that is either in the real world or a virtual world. There's a lot of different sub technical items that we can add into this metaverse. Is it persistent? Is it decentralized and using Web3? Is it deployed on a head-mounted display or a phone? Head-mounted display being an Oculus, MetaQuest Pro 2, Magic Leap, etc. We'll get into those when we talk about spatial computing in the second half of this week. Is there data processing? Is it held on a server in the cloud? Right? These different items really define or compose what a metaverse can be, and a metaverse has a significant amount of interactivity that can happen within it, right? When we think of it as just a place for gaming, we do a disservice for the long-term technology and how it's going to actually impact users and we'll pull up a slide here in a second to talk about that. But there are various aspects of a metaverse that are important. The big ones are transport, transform, and transact. The ability to transport myself or change the world around me is vital for this underlying definition of a metaverse. I'm transporting myself to a new time, location, space. I'm fully replacing the world around me, or I'm transporting, an ad that is in the real world and making it a beautiful screensaver, right? And I have built-in headset ad blocker, right? When I walk around or drive around town, I'm transporting that information. The next one is transforming. Transforming is the ability to transform myself or the world around me. So transport, I'm bringing in digital objects into my real world, or I'm transporting myself into a virtual world. Transforming is I'm changing how the world around me or myself interacts with the space. That's very easy. The avatar creator is a great example of that, and everything from Decentraland to Sandbox, etc., Spatial.io, right? I'm transforming who I am. I'm moving past, Synthetic Rob and the Synth Reality podcast here, and moving into the world of myself as a giant bear, or myself as a Dungeons and Dragons character. Okay, so that's that avatar and creation aspect. So that's transforming who I am or transforming the real world around me. I want the world to be highly neon and cyberpunkish, right? Can I transform through a filter on these glasses that I wear, so that my world is completely different or unique to my own? And the last one is transaction. Okay, transaction is one of those that most people don't realize is important to a metaverse experience, but it is. And the reason it is because if I can't do anything but view content or interact with content in the space, then I'm diminishing the idea of the creator economy. So transaction, whether it's fiat or non-fiat, blockchain based or non-blockchain based, it's actually really, really vital. So the transaction aspect is either the ability to purchase something digitally, whether it's that filter that we were talking about that makes everything look like cyberpunk, or PacSun and their gold wings in Roblox, right? I'm able to purchase and able to support the creator economy. And the creator economy is one portion of Web3 and metaverses that's really crucial for the long-term sustainment of any metaverse, right? That is what users are gearing themselves for when it comes to Web3 decentralization and metaverse, and especially moving away from this idea of Web2. Talk about that in a second. But that transaction has to happen in some way, shape, and form. Okay, so Web 2. Let's talk about it. Let's dig in. Web 2 is the current web. It is centralized. Your data is centralized in Web 2 systems. It's owned by the various accounts that you have, whether that's Google, whether that's Facebook, whether that's Microsoft, etc. The more data that it can aggregate, it centralizes that data into those systems. The big movement away from Web 2 to Web 3 is decentralized data. Decentralized data means that I own my own data, and I bring the data that I want to the specific location, website, etc. that I go to. This is like a major, major shift from how things are currently built. So when we look at that Web3 decentralized data stack for my identity and my information, that unlocks what's called the creator economy. So as I create more data or more information about myself on the web, or digital assets, environments, digital objects, etc., I have the ability now to monetize my information, as well as my content creation, as well as my data creation. So instead of being the product of a website, right? Facebook is free because you are the product. The advertisers advertise towards you. That's why it's free for you to go on, if you didn't know that. welcome. If you did know that, that's fantastic. But what happens in Web3 is that as I bring these created pieces of information or actual digital objects, etc., into an experience, whether it be a digital world or a virtual world or a physical and digital combined world, I own that information and it is thus leased to the people that are running that metaverse. Okay, so they should pay for that data or access to that data, or I should have at least bare minimum the choice to share specific information to those metaverses or experiences. Okay, so that's one of the big shifts between Web 2 and Web 3 is I go from a centralized, the user is the product they're advertised to, as an example. Through this decentralization process, my data is not stored within the system, but it is stored on an external repository of decentralized servers and networks and infrastructure. And when we get to Web3, now the websites want to use that data to understand who I am. They will actually access it. And when they access it, that means the creator economy exists, and I get to choose what they access. And if they want to give full access, I can be compensated or transacted with that data, right? And then it goes the same way through digital object creation, right? If I make a set of skins for a game, Roblox, Decentraland Sandbox, Spatial.io, whatever it may be, right? If I make a skin, if I want to be paid, I should be paid in the same way where it is owned by me and is not owned by a marketplace. And the percentages move towards a creator economy where they are getting a majority and not a small amount, right? So that's one of those big shifts. But let's pull up a experience here so that we can talk through the various types of metaverses that are out there and how they're being used. So this was actually built out from a couple different areas, specifically the 2020 Citigroup presentation that was put together. So metaverse experiences are pretty wide ranging. They can go from smart manufacturing all the way through virtual cities and public services. So think of smart manufacturing as a little bit of what we talked about in digital twins. I have a warehouse that's in New Jersey that creates Coke cans. Those Coke cans are going at 100,000 cans an hour, or 100,000 cans an hour. If I'm doing that many, I need to see that information in a virtualized way, so I can have a digital representation of that manufacturing facility actually in my real world through a headset or through a web page that lets me access it. That's just one example of smart manufacturing. When we get over to healthcare, there is definitely a opportunity for metaverse style healthcare, and what that looks like is the ability to visit the world's best surgeons, doctors, etc., through a metaverse style experience. What that means is I can go and take a digital version of myself, a digital carbon copy, and we'll talk about digital humans and synthetic data sets maybe in 2 weeks. But I could take a digital version of myself and bring that to the metaverse Mount Sinai, right? Or Sloan Kettering, etc. This healthcare experience, or even my local practitioner, or if I'm in a remote location, I'm living in the South Sudan, or a remote location, and I need to visit a doctor, can I send a digital twin of myself directly to that doctor and have this metaverse style examination? Education's pretty straightforward. A digital or blended world when you go on campus. Maybe your professor is not there, but they are a hologram, right? That would be pretty interesting, but they could still see all the students in the room. All the way through these virtual cities and digital concerts, right? The idea of having a digital concert is already been produced. Snoop Dogg had one. There's been several before, and a couple different ones. Spotify has their own Roblox experience. So there's they're pretty, I wouldn't say mainstream right now, but they're pretty popular in their style experiences. So when we think of metaverses, they extend well beyond, right, Minecraft and Rec Room. Okay, and there's two different types. There's this centralized world and decentralized world, and it's vitally important that we talk about both of those. So that's the primary purpose of today's conversation, is to talk about decentralized versus centralized experience. So we got a good foundation of what metaverse is and how these metaverse manifest themselves and what they create to, or can be created around. And they also even talked a little bit about the different styles of them. But ultimately, we want to talk about how you would properly or improperly build a metaverse. And we're going to call out a specific example in the improper, or what's actually happening versus what should be happening. So, left hand side, a little bit of a recap of what we talked about already. On the right hand side, what is actually happening. So, the left hand side, you see a Gartner presentation. For those of you who know who Gartner is a fantastic resource, massive research and organization. So what they're detailing out here is the future aspirations of next generation, web and cyberspace overall. So originally Web 1 and Web 2, right? Centralized data resources. On Web 1, you actually needed to know exactly where you were going. So you had to type in a specific repository or data or location for you to have access to it. For Web 2, you were able to search and understand where that data was, and you could search different things, but the data and information was still centralized. So in a Web 3 experience, we now digitize that and decentralize it, or excuse me, not digitize, decentralize it, which means now we have the ability to see that information wherever we want across a public blockchain. So blockchain technology, everyone's probably familiar with that from cryptocurrency, or may be familiar with it from cryptocurrency. What that basically means is that the information is stored across a public ledger, but only portions of that information is stored across each server or instance. That ultimately lets us have a decentralized network of information, which is great. It lets us understand across the board how that will interact. When we look at the decentralized ID aspects of it, what that actually means is being able to see yourself and your data across the same blockchain service or infrastructure. A good explanation of this is wallets. Wallets for cryptocurrency are decentralized and on a public ledger. Imagine taking that cryptocurrency wallet and applying it to you, yourself, and your data. That's decentralized ID. Excuse me. And then when we look at experiences, you have this metaverse social ownership and interaction portion of what that looks like. We're going to add the transact layer as the business here process. So cryptocurrency, NFTs, and DAOs. We'll talk about DAOs at some point in the future. We hit cryptocurrency a little bit, and everyone should be somewhat familiar with what an NFT is. So that's really Web3. When you couple that with a metaverse, what that actually is doing is saying, okay, there's a physical and digital world. There's 3D, AR, and VR, right? This very standard metaverse term. Then you have this gaming and commerce aspect of it, and you have virtual economy, right? So the ability to use or interact with cryptocurrency and have an interesting experience, and ultimately drive to being a persistent immersive experience with its own economy created by it. Great. So those combined, we get, sorry about that. With that thing combined, or with that all combined together, we get this next generation of cyber experiences. That is what people want to be building related to cryptocurrency, metaverse, Web3, decentralization. That is the metaverse projected. Okay. The issue with that is that is extremely difficult and time consuming to build. The infrastructure that required for this is very, very lofty. So that is not easy. It is not super, super quick and fast to get to market. So what that actually has brought to the market is now the rise of what we're going to call monolithic metaverses. A monolithic metaverse is a Web 2 experience with avatars on a centralized system. And when we do that, we disengage with a lot of the key aspects of Web 3 and metaverse technology. Okay, specific example. The World Economic Forum launched the Global Collaboration Village. The Global Collaboration Village is built with 80 plus organizers. It was talked about in 2022. It was highlighted in 2023 Davos, just the last week. But ultimately, it's built on top of Azure, a centralized cloud-based infrastructure, and then it's added an interaction and virtualization layer using Teams and Mesh. Mesh is a Microsoft-based avatar builder for Teams and allows you to move around digital spaces. This is a monolith. This is has nothing to do with Web3. There's no decentralization aspects. There is no ability to have a unique experience related to moving across metaverses or owning data or anything like that. It is a single solitary repository of all your data information and in a specific location. Well, why is that bad? It's bad because we lose all the aspects of the great aspects of Web3 and decentralization. And we go into a new version of Web2, right? Where we are the product again. We don't have the ability to share that information to who we want. It is all or nothing. Because it's centralized in a single repository, you can't move your data, your information that you created in this World Economic Forum to another one without it being configurable to Azure, Teams, and Mesh. That is not what people are looking for and wanted when it came to metaverse style activities. Can the visuals be fantastic? Absolutely. Can the infrastructure be solid and have very low latency? Absolutely. But if you look at the underlying methodology of what this is going to be, you really need to gear it towards decentralization versus a monolith, a single structure that's built on a single system that holds all the data and information related to your experience. That is not what we wanted to see in Web3. So, I wrote a quick write-up about the Global Collaboration Village. We haven't seen any specific data besides this and the 80 partners that signed on to it. Microsoft and Accenture were called out as the top two. And again, it is one portion, one style of experience for Metaverse. And it goes against most of the things you see on the left-hand side. A single platform with a single way of interacting with no decentralized data set, which ultimately really reduces the interactivity that can happen. So with that, that wraps up today's chat about monolithic metaverses, right? What we're seeing more and more is the rise of these monoliths, and it is to appease those that think the metaverse is coming but don't want to make the investment into a decentralized Web3 based experience. That divergence is not exactly surprising. One's a quick, easy fix and hopefully pulls in the next generation of users, quote unquote. The other side of it is really more sustainable and more geared towards users. So there are organizations that are out there that are pushing the boundaries of what metaverse activity should be. I'm actually a part of the Metaverse Foundation, which is a fantastic group, Metaverse Principles group. It's fantastic. They're really awesome, and they're looking at diagnosing or at least putting in guidelines for these type of activities. So in the short run, yes, we will see the rise of more WEF-style metaverses. There's going to be a lot of them. There's going to be a lot of different ones, and they're going to be centralized, and they're not going to adhere to these kind of guidelines or principles of Web3. We hope in the long run that the slower adoption of these increases the likelihood of Web3 style, decentralized style, true metaverses. Now, there may be people out there that may be saying, hey, well, Rob, I can only do a monolithic metaverse because it's for healthcare, or it's for insurance, or it's for manufacturing, or it's for X, Y, and Z. Understandable. It There is levels of own data that should or should not be decentralized. That's something that's up for debate for sure. But if the user is responsible and on a decentralized network, you have a much higher chance of the adoption because they own that information, at least from the next digital generation. Don't let the wool be pulled over your eyes to those that pull out a metaverse experience and it is centralized. Although it doesn't hold to the standards, there are stipulations that go against any rule. So with that, that wraps up today's podcast. Appreciate the time, you guys hanging out. Again, I am Rob Petrosino, technologist, futurist, and all-around great guy. But really excited to continue talking. Follow me on social. Socials are down at the bottom. Everything from subscription on podcast to YouTube to over on Twitter. Reach out, and next conversation will be about the spatial computing spectrum, what that means, AR, VR, how that all fits together, and then we'll follow that up with a little bit of machine learning and some other cool stuff. So with that, thank you all.